Okay, so in this case we look at the welfare implications of a price floor. So what are the welfare implications of a price floor? And we assume that the price floor is P equals 8. So the government says essentially that the equilibrium price that would prevail without any governmental intervention of 6, that is too low. So everyone has to pay at least 8. So let's do that. So the price floor is here. Oops, shapes, okay, at 8. So, thank you. Okay, so here we have our price floor. So a price floor is above the equilibrium price and the price ceiling is below. And another word for price floor is minimum price, and another word for price ceiling is maximum price. And now we can do again our welfare analysis. So we have our various parameters. And we have the value. Okay, so now the price is obviously 8 because that's what the government mandates. And so now what is quantity demanded? So quantity demanded is 2 and quantity supplied is 6. So that means we have excess supply of 1, 2, 3, 4. And the question is again, how much is actually being turned over in the market? So how much is being supplied and consumed? And again, this is of course only 2. So what we need to do is we need to conduct our welfare analysis with respect to a quantity of 2. And so now, so the quantity turned over is 2, and again we see there is a reduction of economic activity from what used to be 4 under the market equilibrium or the free market equilibrium. So the price floor, just as the price ceiling, kills economic activity, but obviously the purpose of the price floor is to protect the producers. So an example for the price floor is often like agricultural subsidies or a minimum price that farmers will get in order to protect their incomes. But as we can see, it will reduce economic activity. But let's take a look at the welfare implication, and let's first look at the consumer surplus. So obviously the consumer surplus is now only this triangle here. And this triangle is 2 times 2, which is 4 over 2, so that's 2. And if you remember, in the market equilibrium, we had a consumer surplus of 8. So that is now a reduction again of 6. Now what about the producer surplus? So the producer surplus is, I'll do that again. So this is this area here. and which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9.5, 10. And we have now a similar scenario as with the price ceiling, which is that the producer surplus, they gain only 2, because in the free market equilibrium, producer surplus was all this area. So, but they gain 2, but what happens is total surplus is now only 12, which is a reduction again of 4, because in the free market equilibrium we had a total welfare or total surplus of 16, and now again we can see that the deadweight loss is this area here, so this triangle here is the deadweight loss, because that used to be partially consumer surplus. So that used to be consumer surplus, but this is now lost. And this used to be producer surplus, but this is now lost. So our deadweight loss is 4. So deadweight loss is 4. Okay, so now if we compare a price ceiling and a price floor, the idea of politicians is obviously to either make the consumers better off. That is the case whenever we have a price ceiling, or we want to make the producers better off, which is the case of a price floor. So, but let's quickly stick to the idea of a price floor. So let's say this is the market for agriculture, and those are milk farmers, and we promise every farmer that the milk price is 8, even though if the market were not obstructed by the price floor, we know the price would be 6. So the farmers are given a higher price, and the idea is to make the farmers, the producers of milk, better off. And we can see, yeah, that works, because the producer surplus is 10, which is an increase of 2. But at the same time, the consumers, well, they lose much more, because they lose 6. So that's why it's a negative sum game. So there's even a better strategy. If, let's say, we want to make the farmers better off, well, then we have to go back to the market equilibrium, and what we can say is, well, we basically tax the consumers, and let's say we tax the consumers too. So let's say, assume you tax consumers 3, and just give it as a cash transfer. That's supposed to be a cash transfer to the farmer. Well then, if the consumers, if we take away 3 of them, we just say, you have to pay 3, and we give it to the producers, we still have the same welfare, but the producers have now 11, so that is plus 1 relative to the price floor, because they had 10. But if we redistribute, if we tax the consumers and just give it as a cash transfer to the farmers, they have now 11, which is still 1 better than under the price floor, and the consumers, they still can keep 5, which is still plus 3 better than under the price floor, because under the price floor they get only 2. So I still remember when I was a student, I had a professor, and he always said, and I like that a lot, and that's very important, so that's why I write it here. So my professor always said let's make it in red because it's important. So he said that in economics, allocation always comes before redistribution. So in economics, allocation always comes before redistribution. So that is an important policy insight, because if we have, for example, a price floor, the idea is to roll over more welfare to the producers. So the objective is to increase producer surplus. A price floor can accomplish that, but it's not the most efficient solution, because in order to do so, what the producers gain is much less than what the consumers lose in absolute terms. So therefore, when my former professor always said in economics allocation always comes before redistribution, what he had in mind was to say, you know what, we always need to let the market clear first. So let the market clear, and then if we don't like the result for whatever reason, either because as a society we all agree that the producer should get more of the pie, in the case of a price floor, let's say, or the consumer should get more surplus, which we could do with a price ceiling. Both price floors and price ceilings are bad public policies, and a much better policy would be just to redistribute. But first, we always let the market clear here. We get the equilibrium price of 6, the equilibrium quantity of 4. If we don't like the result, well, then we can redistribute after the fact. After the market clears, then we redistribute, essentially with cash transfers. And that is a much more efficient policy than redistributing welfare through, for example, a price ceiling. And a price ceiling is nothing else but redistributing welfare from the producers to the consumers. And it is also much better than a price ceiling, which is essentially nothing else but redistribution of surplus from consumers to producers. So in economics, and this is really true in allocation always comes before redistribution. And again, what that means is it is a good public policy to let markets clear first. And then if for whatever reason we don't like the outcome, because maybe we still see some vulnerable segments of society, then the best policy is to give them cash transfer and paying those cash transfers out of tax revenues, essentially. But even that is not without complications, but it is still better than meddling with the market equilibrium. Okay, but I'll just stop here before everything gets too long. And so we just need to fill out quickly this table. So we go back again to the price floor. If the price floor is 8, we said quantity demanded is 2, quantity supplied was 6, but the quantity turned over was only 2. Consumer surplus is now that little triangle up there, which is 2. And we said that's a reduction of 6. The producer surplus we said was 10. That was an increase of 2. So now total welfare is 12, but that is still a loss of welfare of 4. So the dead weight loss is 4. Okay, so I hope that is clear, and I'll just stop here, and then we continue in the next video with the impact of attacks.